Hi, welcome to Open Hand Farm. My name is Penny, and today I'm going to do my second installment of information that I learned while attending the Country Tough Homesteading Expo in Sedalia, Missouri at the Von Holten Ranch. Today we're going to talk about seed saving. Mike from White Harvest Seed Company was there. It's a family-owned seed company, and the family is amazing. They were so personable, and they don't want you to just buy their seeds. They want to have a relationship with you. So if you are looking for a new place to buy seeds, check out the White Harvest Seed Company. They do have a catalog that you can order online. I will leave a link in my description box to their website, and you can go check that out. He had some really good information on seed saving that I didn't know. I'm fairly new to that, and I learned a lot. The question is, why save your own seeds? Well, Mike had some really great reasons for this. A couple of them are it saves money because you don't have to buy seeds every year. It secures your family's future food needs and only grow what you need to grow that your family will eat. Then he told us about the difference between the plants that we might be planting in our gardens. And this was very beneficial to me. So there are hybrids, and that's where two different plants of the same variety are combined for a plant that is ideal because it has the separate characteristics of two plants in one. So if you have two tomatoes, you love something about both of them, and you would love to have a tomato that had both of those things in it, that's what a hybrid is. Then there is GMO. And I think a lot of us know that that is genetically modified organisms, and in which varieties which have had genes from another species artificially implanted into their DNA to create another fruit or vegetable that would not exist in nature. So this is completely created. Then we have open pollinated. Now, the open pollinated will produce a true to type fruit. Now, if you are growing a plant that you love and you want that exact plant, then you need to think about open pollinated plants. Now, these varieties are true to type, and when you take their seed and plant their seed, you will get exactly what you are expecting because it is true to the fruit. Unless you have it too close to another species of the same fruit or vegetable that will cross-pollinate with it. So if you want open pollinated, so you want a seed that will be exactly what you are expecting from the parent plant, that is open pollinated. Then there are heirlooms. Now these are open pollinated varieties, and they have produced true to type for over 50 years. So they are known to be true. They're known for their flavors or their colors or their textures or all of the uniqueness that is important in maintaining that fruit. So these are the things that you need to propose and plan about saving seeds. And the very first thing is to ask yourself, how are the plants pollinated? So there are 4 different kinds of pollination. There is self-pollination, and that happens with beans eggplants, lettuce, peas, and tomatoes. You guys, I had no idea that tomatoes were self-pollinated. So what happens is that little flower opens up, and once it opens, it kind of springs the pollination powder or whatever is in there. It kind of springs it open, and it kind of a puff of pollination into the flower so that it is pollinated. That's crazy to me. Now, wind pollinated, I'm familiar with that one, where you want to plant things close together so that the wind will blow it and pollinate each other. So that would be with beets, spinach, corn, Swiss chard, things like that. And then, of course, most of us know about bugs because we want to bring pollinators into our garden. So those are bees, butterflies, things like that. And those are necessary for broccoli, cabbages, carrots, cucumbers, melons, and squashes. And of course, there is artificially pollinated, where a gardener will decide if he wants to or not, take a brush or some other implement to gather some of the pollen from the male flower to put onto the female flower so that he knows it is pollinated. But seriously, leave in the comments, did you know about all of these styles of pollination? This next slide blew me away. I had no idea the distance that you had to have between varieties of the same species in order to pollinate in an open pollinated way so that your seeds will produce a true fruit like the fruit you are collecting seeds from. I am wanting to save green bean seeds this year, and because they are self-pollinated, if I plant one variety and then I plant another variety after the first variety is pretty much done blooming, then I shouldn't have any problems. But if I want to have beans that are not cross-pollinated, that are blooming at the same time, Mike suggested that we take a baggie or something like that and put it over the flower before it opens. Maybe you have one plant that you decide to cover all of the blooms, have them pollinate themselves, and then start growing the beans. At that point, you can take the bags off, and that plant will be open pollinated, true to type seeds that you can use for that specific variety the next year. But there is a chance that if you have two plants blooming at the same time, even though they are self-pollinated, it's possible that a bee or a butterfly could come by, land on the flower, go land on a flower in the other plant, and cross-pollinate it. Who knew? Is anybody else learning this along with me and you're just as fascinated as I am? Leave it in the comments and let me know. The next few slides will tell us the method of saving the seeds. So there is the shell and dry method. You just dry it on the plant. So after they have gone to seed, you just let it dry, and when the pod or the cobs or whatever are finally cured, you just take the seeds out of them. Then we have the cut and dry method. Now, when these varieties are ready to process, all you have to do is cut open the vegetable, remove the seed, and wash it. And then you dry it for another 2 weeks out of direct sunlight, again in a 70 to 80 degree Fahrenheit temperature. before your final storage. So these two methods are fairly simple. One you let dry, one you remove and then let it dry. No big deal. The next method is to soak and dry, or the wet method. And this is especially done with tomatoes and cucumbers. So I'm going to show you how to do this one instead of just having you look at the slide. This is a Marglobe non-GMO heirloom tomato, so its seeds will be true to type and open pollinated. So the first thing we need to do is to cut the tomato open, and if I had cut it crossways the other way, I would have exposed all the seeds. Now, because I did not cut the correct direction in this, I'm going to cut it one more time because there are more seeds hiding in there. So after you put your seeds in the bowl, you will see that they are covered in a gelatinous type stuff. And what I found out at this seed saving class is that gelatinous covering actually keeps the seeds from germinating. So in order to have your seeds be able to germinate, that has to be removed. So you pour filtered water over it, or well water, and you let it sit and ferment for 3 days, and it will dissolve the gelatinous coating, and you will have seeds that sink to the bottom and some that float on top. Mike did go into some detail about storing your seeds after you saved them, as well as storing any seeds that you buy or save. Go to their contact page, and towards the bottom, there is a frequently asked question area, and one of those is, can I save seed that I don't use for the next year? And along in that, there is a click here button for more seed storage tips. So check that out, and you will see really good information on storing your seeds, how long, what to store them in, and all that good stuff. Now, if you have seeds that you're not sure if they're going to germinate, instead of wasting all your time planting them, wasting your soil that you're planting them in, here is a germination viability test that you can do. So this is the way I would do it. I would use like a snack bag or sandwich bag, and I would label the bag with whatever seeds I'm putting in there. Then I could start different seeds in each baggie and check them. And once you see that some of those seeds are sprouting, you can go ahead and plant those seeds and let them continue to grow and not have to waste them. And of course, some of those seeds will sprout sooner than others because that's just what seeds do. Okay, now let's see what Mike has to say about gardening with the moon.
Moon gardening and lunar homesteading. Astronomy came along from the Babylonians. They focused on, the moon every 30 days comes back full. Part of the moon, it goes in different cycles. They saw the stars in their orbits. That was a continuous thing. And they started studying, what happens when the moon is full around in the nature around us in our land? They took notes. What happens when the moon is dark? All these different things in between, okay? So they based their knowledge, their intellect, off the actual things that were constant. No predicting. It was based on the truth. And it's kind of, I don't know, not to step on anybody's toes at all, but I'm a believer in Jesus Christ and the Lord God Almighty. And He controls everything, in my opinion. He's the one that put all the things in the sky at night. There's some verses just from the Bible. Probably the King James Version might be the new edition, I don't know. But he's the one that did all that. He's organized. He organized everything. He's in control of everything. So that's my premise. That's my family's business. We're White Harvest Seed, just right out the door here. That's my family's motivation, okay, in doing business with folks and all that. But here's a quote by a lady that I can't remember her exact name. I didn't write it down, but you can read it. And this is what the moon actually does. The moon affects, in different stages, the water supply. Why? You think what happens? How can you prove that? Oh, come on. From the tides in the ocean. You got high tide, low tide, right? And that's exactly what's happening. The moon's gravitational pull is pulling harder. And at certain times when the moon and the sun are lined up on their both sides, which we'll get to that slide here in a minute, that it's strong. That's when it's strongest. When the moon and the sun are aligned, that's one of the strongest times for water to go up in the ground or down in the ground. And you can see how that would affect the plant seed cycle. So here you see the sun, you see the earth, and then you see how the moon reflects the light back, depending on where the earth is in every section. Now, you're going to cheat here. You can see, we all know what a full moon is, right? New moon is the total opposite. It's when it's totally dark. There's no moon in the sky throughout that period of the week. But in between, you can see, are the different ones. There's a waxing moon and a waning moon. Waxing is always essentially easy to remember, is the moon is getting bigger, getting brighter. You can see that there, the gibbous, waxing gibbous and all that. You get down here to when the moon starts getting a lot darker, the waning. So how does the moon phases impact our gardens and homesteads? Well, I already cheated and gave you the answer. It affects the water supply. And the fancy word for that, word of the day, you go home and impress your neighbors, geotropism. Real simple. It's how plants respond to gravity. Real simple. If we didn't have gravity, we'd all be floating around wherever. So then plants are just as sensitive to that as we are, believe it or not. So effects of gravity we see here, that the gravity encourage when it's pulling down hard, wherever the moon's at its time, it's going to pull the roots down, tend to. And it's also drawing down the water, so the roots are having to what? Oh, I'm thirsty. Dig down to the bottom, dig for the water. When the moon's pulling the other way, the water is what? Which is the planting time, the water is coming to the surface. What do seeds need? Water makes the seeds grow. When you plant your bean seed or corn seed in your gardens, they're dry, right? They're not, unless you soak them, but they're dry. That seed will not grow whatsoever unless its thirst is quenched. That seed has to get unthirsty, okay, before it will start its germination process. You can water it every day, but if that seed hasn't got enough water, it's not going to work. And if you give it too much water, what happens? It rots, right? So we understand the concept. So that water's coming up into the ground, the seeds are reaching down for it from the new situations, and it's a beautiful combination. So the key concept to understand, which crops do you plant at certain times of the year? Well, believe it or not, the above ground crops, as you see here, the tomatoes, the corn, beans, all those things that are above ground, they have their special time. The plants like carrots, onions that are below ground have their special time. And that's what we're going to learn, hopefully, today. And why is that? Why does that make a difference? And here's the answer. As the moonlight increases in the waxing stage, from the noon to the full, the moonlight's increasing. What do plants, after they've sprouted, what do they need? Another item to need. Light, right? So the more light that shines, even at night, plants are responding to it. And when the moon gets brighter, when it gets to the fuller stages, it's pretty bright. The root crops is a different stage. The ground is sucking down the water is moving down in the ground, the root crops are in the ground, they're reaching down for the water. The carrots, the onions, your turnips, those type of things, they're reaching down. That benefits them. That's in your waning state. So what do we plant? The first quarter. So you're looking at the new moon, the waxing gibbous, and the first quarter. That's this period. What do you do in that first quarter? Asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, barley, cabbage, cauliflower, celery, cucumbers, corn, cress, endive, kohlrabi, lettuce, oats, barley, and your spinach and your annual flowers. What to plant in the next quarter, from the first quarter to the full moon. This is where this is the beans, eggplant, your melons, your peas, your peppers, your pumpkins, squash, your tomatoes. More of your garden basics. How many plant their gardens by the moon phases? Anybody? Have you ever done it? You will see a difference. I can vouch for it when I germ test our seed packets and test the seed that we sell to folks. At certain times, if I germ test in my germ station at the right time, at the times to do beans like beans right now, those beans pop, they'll sprout in my germ station in less than 2 days. Probably about 2 to 3 days, mostly. Boom. Now, of course, in your garden, they're in the ground. You don't see a result of that sprout that quick necessarily until they come through the ground. So now we're into the full moon stage, to the last quarter, the other half of the moon. Okay? And you can see here, artichokes, you're below ground. Beets, carrots, chicory, parsnips, potatoes, radishes, rutabaga, your turnips, all your bulbs like your tulip plants and things like that, and your perennial flowers. That's a really good time to plant those. Why? Again, the ground is sucking moisture downward. It's going to force the roots of those plants to grow and prosper that way. The last quarter, from the half moon to it gets dark. Nothing. Try really hard to memorize that. Remember that. Don't plant during that. You may have some success, but you won't have as good a success as the other time. Okay? Things to do. So you think, well, 10 days of the month, am I going to do nothing in my garden? No. That's the time you can go out there and turn sod, destroy weeds, pull them. Picking apples, if your apple time is ripe then. Your pears, your harvests are in those times. When your plants are in that stalemate stage, if you want to call it that, or pause stage. But go out there and destroy your weeds. And believe it or not, your weeds die better during this time. You think, what do you mean? They die and they stay dead. So here's some other tips to do. The ideal time is to plant 3 days. So that would be in the waxing gibbous stage, that last week of the right before the full moon. That's really the idealist time. Why? Because it's pulling the water. And you can see there it says the best plants to grow these seeds is when the seeds are inside the fruit. The waning, the moon's getting darker. Things like it's a resting phase. Okay? Consider that. You get a few days off, in a sense. Okay? And that's a good time to fertilize with solid. Do your composting and do your harvesting and your pruning. So prune, if you're doing pruning trees or you're grafting or pruning your tomato plants, doing at the waning period.
I thought that was so interesting. In my last video about the Country Tough Homesteading Expo, we listened to Clyde talk to us about a fall garden. Well, if you are going to have a fall garden, I would love it if you would think through when you're going to be planting, when you're going to be starting seeds, and see if you can tell a difference. I have never done a fall garden, really. I've planted a couple things and they didn't come to fruition, and I just kind of said whatever and pulled it. This year I would like to have a fall garden, and that is my plan. So I thought I would try to pay attention to some of these things and see if they work. Let me know if you can tell a difference. I would love to see that in the comments. Thank you so much for coming along today. I hope that you learned something out of this video. I know I learned so much. Until next time, blessings on you and yours.